Okay, so I'm going to show you how to start off knitting the first sleeve of the Glittertind cardigan or jumper. Okay, so I'm making the biggest size, so I've cast on 40 stitches. I've just cast them on as you would normally do onto your needle, and what I'm going to do is show you how to join that. I've cast on an extra stitch at the end, so I've actually got 41, and the reason is that I usually put that onto the knitting side of the needle. I knit the two sides that you're joining together through that stitch. I'll show you how that works in a minute. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you, I've got this really long circular needle. You can use a much shorter one if you want. This is just the one I have. So I'm going to show you how to put a loop through it. So pull maybe the first 5 stitches back to where the cable bit of the needle starts, and then you push it through like that and pull it. Okay, and that means that you're ending up effectively with a much shorter needle. And what you've got is that loop sticking out the back and all your stitches on the 2 needles, which is what you're going to be knitting from. Okay, the most important, so I'm just pushing these down to the end of the needles, which is where I'm going to be doing the knitting, so it's all quite bunched up. Most important thing you need to bear in mind here is to check that you haven't put a twist in that. So the needle should run, the stitches should run straight across here and back down here. There should be no twist, so you probably want to line up all the stitches just to check there's no twist in there. I've done it several times and it's really annoying. There's no way to fix it, you just have to take it out again if you find you've put a twist in it later. Okay, so worth really checking very hard just now. Okay, so you take your yarn that you're going to be knitting with, as normal on your right hand side, you scooch all these stitches up, and you just pop the last stitch on the right hand side onto the first, to the left hand needle, and that's actually a bit tricky. Sometimes I usually use a bit of brute force just to get that over. You might want to leave a few more stitches on your right hand needle to make that a bit easier on yourself. She says, wishing she had done that. Okay, so you knit your first 2 stitches like that, so it's quite tight. It will get looser as you start knitting, particularly once you've done a couple of rounds, and you just slip those over as you would normally. So you've knitted 2 together, and that just binds that little circle, okay? And then you just start your knitting, all right? And what you're doing is you're just doing stocking stitch essentially at the moment. I'm going to do my first row just stocking stitch because it's just a lot easier when you're joining in the round like this. Okay, and I use this method to knit most of my sleeves and quite a lot of jumpers, and I do it because I find it a lot easier than fiddling around with double pointed needles. But each have their own, everyone has their own preferred method, I guess. I really like using this knitting in the round when I'm doing colour stranded work, because it simply means that you don't have to deal with knitting and holding the colours differently when you're knitting the back side of the garment. It just makes it I think it makes it a lot easier, a lot more straightforward. Okay, so what you can see now is I'm getting to a point where I'm sort of starting to run a bit short of stitches on my left hand side to knit. I'm going to knit a few more, and I'm just going to show you how to shuffle that loop along so that you can get a few more stitches to knit on your left hand side. Okay, so we're almost there. This is just, it is, as I say, it's slightly tough when you first start out, but it does get a lot easier as you get on. Okay, and you would normally want to do this on a shorter round needle, but I just don't have one. Okay, so then I've just pulled that back through, and then I'm just going to pull this cable back and then push these stitches on. You can have another loop if you like, if it makes it easier. I sometimes do that. So for instance here, okay, I'm just going to push that through and pull some of that cable back. So I've kind of got 2 loops now going on. I don't know if you can see that. It looks really complicated, but actually once you get into the swing of it, it's a lot easier, and you need fewer loops as the sleeve gets a bit bigger as you go along. Okay, and you just carry on knitting, and I'm about to finish my first round. Okay, and you can easily see that when you first set off, you first start doing your knitting in the round, because of course the tail is still there, okay, and that's where you joined. All right, so I usually put a little loop of different colour thread yarn there just to mark it, because I mean, obviously if you're knitting in the round anyway, you need to know how many rows you've knitted quite often in the pattern, or you know, if you're doing a colour stranded pattern, any sort of pattern with different colours, you need to know where your round starts and finishes. Okay, and it's easy to find it here, but later on obviously it's a bit more tricky to work out exactly where you want to be, so I always put a marker in. Okay, so what you can see then is I've got right to the end. You can see that actually that join's quite good, and quite a tight join between the two sides, and I'm just knitting over that join again, and that, there we go. And in a couple of rows you won't even be able to notice where that join was between the two sets of stitches. Okay, and you can see I'm just checking here, I've only done 2 rows, so I'm just checking that I haven't twisted those stitches, and I haven't, so just worth having another quick check when you do that before you get too much further. It will save you a lot of swearing later on. Okay, so I hope that's clear, and I'll do another video in a minute, show you how to do the joining of the colour work.